Hi, my name is Koku with blackfilm.com, and I'm here with Anthony Sparks, lead writer and executive producer on NBC Peacock's Bel-Air, also the showrunner for Queen Sugar, which entered its seventh and final season, and people are so sad about that. Anthony, it's so great to talk to you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Koku. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you. Thank you for the opportunity to do so.
Thank you. And I want to tell you that with your background and in your position, because I think a lot of times we do talk to people who are just straight ahead talent. We never get to speak to people that are behind the scenes or kind of how did they get there? Yeah, what's going on? Or is this the path for me? But I think it's very interesting because even as I see your path, you've had a chance to just kind of live out so many different acts. So it's like you were in theater at some particular point, yes?
Yep, so, absolutely.
Yeah, and then you went into television writing, and of course, as an executive producer, you've worn so many hats, and of course, education is obviously very important for you as well.
It is.
Chicago native, let's talk about it.
Chicago South Side.
Originally I am from a little town called Country Club Hills, Illinois.
Country Club Hills.
Yeah.
Afford to live in Country Club Hills.
that was fancy right back then. No,
back then it was.
Well, Country Club Hills, to put it in perspective, because you know about Chicago, Country Club Hills, it's no different than some of those suburbs that are really, really next to the proximity of the city. So Country Club Hills, it's not giving much more than it's no different than Markham, Hazel Crest, Harvey. It's not Flossmoor and Matson. No.
Okay, all right. Let's keep it straight. I spent a lot of days in Harvey, Illinois. You know, with my cousins and stuff like that. So I have a lot of fond memories, but I know of what you speak. So
yes. No, Harvey. I've got some really great friends from Harvey, and I'm kind of teasing because we all kind of get on each other. Like, you got these suburb wars and everything. And
everything battle in Chicago. Whenever
everything.
High schools, what suburbs you from? You got to be located. Where are you from for real?
From. And then when I say, like, I can't even say Chicago, like to a true Chicago native such as yourself. If I say I'm from Chicago, then they go, okay, well, where? And I say Country Club Hills. You ain't from Chicago. You cannot do that to Chicago. You will get clowned all the way through.
Called out. It is so funny because there are so many people in Hollywood here running around talking about they're from Chicago. I'm like, where are you from? Evanston.
Rockford. Exactly. So no, I know of what you speak. But I did want to talk to you about, because one of the things I think is really important, that a lot of times when people come to Hollywood, and this is absolutely not to say this as a disparaging or make anything that's negative, but they'll kind of just like land in Hollywood and it's like, I have $30 in my pocket and I just made it.
Yeah.
But then when I'm looking at your trajectory, I mean, you were very intentional in getting your BFA and MFA in theater arts. You have your PhD. So just talk about your path in terms of education in a creative sense, and what that means to you. I think that's important for people to hear that side of it.
Oh my God. First of all, just thank you for that very, very thoughtful question.
Oh, thank you.
And I love that because I am a person who, sometimes people will tell you I fell into this and then I didn't fall into nothing. So when you say the word intentional, that doesn't mean that I knew everything was going to be exactly like it is. But the path that I'm blessed to be on now and what I've been able to do as an executive producer and showrunner in TV, all of that was definitely the result of decisions that were made. And then God smiled on me, right? Okay. So, I was a theater. I know nothing about TV. I mean, growing up in the 80s and the early 90s, I didn't know what those names on those screens meant.
Yeah.
I was the theater. I was doing theater at church.
That's where it starts usually.
The play, the Easter pageant, me reciting The Creation by James Weldon Johnson at church, when I was 13 and stuff like that. So I knew theater and community, and that is what I went to college for. And my mom, God bless her, never batted an eye or doubted me going into that path, because it would have been easy for me. I did well in school, so it would have been easy for me to be like, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a lawyer. And I toyed with some of that, but in my heart and passion was creativity. In the way that I'm doing now. But I discovered that TV writing existed when I was an undergraduate at USC.
Okay.
I did not know that it existed before then. But it still wasn't something that was real. I went to New York. I was acting in New York on Broadway, off Broadway and stuff like that. I was in a show called Stomp for a long time. And I was getting very, very frustrated.
Oh, you know this show called Stomp.
Oh, yeah.
This is the way you just
And never want to presume, but it was a big show. And it was a real blessing to me to be 23, 24, 25 years old, going to work every day to do 8 shows a week. But I was having trouble moving on from it. I was finding TV and film doors closed, and a lot of them were telling me that they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't.
But why would that be the case, though?
Because they thought I was saying, because you got to remember, this is the mid-90s, and if you weren't robbing somebody on an episode of Law and Order, there was nothing really for you to do on any kind of consistent basis. And so they were telling me, like, you know, your resume says hood, but you're not hood, and I don't know what to do with that. And I was like, yeah, but everybody from my neighborhood, like, I know lots of people like me. Why is there no space for me?
Yeah.
And what I realized I was dealing with, and it was a built-in bias and lack of limitation on the side of the business about what it is to live inside this skin. And even though I'm coming and showing up with an authentic experience, it wasn't translating as something that they understood on the side of the table of people who were able to hire. So I realized very early on that I was entering the process way too late as an actor auditioning for roles. And that I needed to be a part of the creative conversation about the creation of the roles in the first place. The people who get to choose the stories that get told on TV, which frankly define our society. I truly believe, and many others do as well. And so I stumbled upon this book called The Showrunners, and that book just was like, described the job. It was called Showrunners, the Real Stars of Television. And it was a behind the scenes book. And I was like, that's what I want to do. That's what I need to be doing. And that's when I shifted gears. So while I was performing, I was backstage writing scripts. And then during the day, before I would show up at the theater that night for my show, I was writing scripts and trying to figure out a pathway forward. And eventually that pulled me back out to Los Angeles. And when I came back to Los Angeles after about 10 years as an actor, it was specifically with the goal to become a television writer and, God willing, a showrunner one day.
So that second phase of living in Los Angeles as a writer.
And that's when I went back to school.
And that's when you went back to school. But what was that like? Because now you're no longer auditioning. You're part of the creation process.
I mean, my life is so crazy because like acting became my day job, and like that doesn't make any sense to most people. How can acting become your day job? And so what that meant was, you know, I was doing my auditions, I'd snag a commercial here and there, and that was my money.
Interesting.
To get me through writing. So I very specifically began to look at acting as a utility to get me to where I really wanted to go, which was to step off the camera and off the stage and start, you know, creating worlds and roles and stuff like that. So, and it was hard. It sounds like I'm telling you this linear story and everything just.
But it's not easy.
There were a lot of no's along the way. There were a lot of tears. There was a lot of, oh my God, maybe I should have gone to law school along the way. You know, a lot of that. But I kept getting just enough breaks and yeses to keep me in the game.
Right.
Until I got that first big job on that first big TV show, you know. And, you know, I was winning fellowships and writing. I had enough things to encourage me to be like, this is not a pipe dream. You can do this.
You're doing it too. Yeah.
You're doing it. You are on the path. You're winning. You know, if you're not winning, you're becoming a finalist in the Walt Disney Fellowship Program. You're winning the Warner Brothers Television Fellowship. And those things did not lead to jobs right away, but it led to agents. It led to finding a community of writers, other Black writers who were also trying to do this and were very serious about it. And that was very important to be a part of, you know, to be a part of the community of people trying to break in. And so it was just enough victories to keep me at it. That plus my TV commercial money and my saved money get me to that first break.
I mean, I think it's interesting because you could have just at the same time, if you just had focused on wanting to be a writer solely, you didn't necessarily have to focus on maybe necessarily wanted to create Black shows.
Yeah.
But you absolutely, in the work that you've done, I mean, it's just absolutely there for people to look at your resume, that you definitely went and sought out to create these roles that we were not seeing on television, the ones that you said that you were not able to get.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
Go ahead. When you think about that, it's just like, do you ever really think about the weight of like what you've done in that sense? Like sometimes when it's you, it's a little bit harder to sort of digest. Like
I'm sitting up here listening to you, and I was like, yeah, that's why we talking today. Yeah, because you're right. Me, I sometimes remind my wife, I'm like, yo, we we roll with a group of creative Black and white people, but a group of creative people. We're so used to having creative conversations.
That's great.
Intellectual conversations, whatever you want to call it, that I sometimes have to go, yo, we're very blessed. You're a country girl from Maryland. I'm a city boy from Chicago by way of Mississippi. It did not have to work out this way.
Right.
Even though we believe that we have a lot to bring to the table and offer, everything doesn't work out the way that you always planned it to. So I feel very grateful to be a person who can access creativity in myself and others. I know that is not something that automatically happens for everyone. My mother, for example, who was raised in Mississippi, and was a woman who, was very creative. She used to sew my dance costumes when I was younger. I used to dance in high school. And she would, she was very creative, and she would exercise it in her cooking and in her sewing and things like that. But the idea that she would be consistently paid to, sit down and write some words or do some drama was not a notion.
Right.
So I do feel like I get to walk out a kind of a barrier breaking dream in that way for a woman who wasn't educated to have a son who gets paid for my thoughts.
Yeah, that's pretty, that's outstanding.
That's the goal.
Right.
Pay me for my thoughts.
Right. What do you think? We basically,
right.
Yeah, I love that.
And so to me, that's a victory, and I'm very grateful and thankful for it. The education piece, just to circle back to what you said before, came along because I realized that I was working in an industry that had a history that I knew about in snatches, but not completely.
Okay.
And I also knew that TV and film was incredibly powerful in how it shapes the world that we live in. And I wanted to be able to know that history specific to the industry, but also just the history of our country beyond what I was picking up, just kind of being generally educated. It became important to me at a certain point to be able to know or have conversations at a high level about what kind of stories and images I'm creating.
Okay.
I wanted that at my fingertips, not just in my instinct. Instinct is great, but sometimes some of us who get the spotlight put on us, we get out here and somebody put a camera on us, you start talking, and those of us who know what we're talking about, we be listening to you and we're like,
it's not, you're not a spokesperson. You shouldn't, who put the camera in that person's face?
Exactly. You're like, back away. What they're saying is like hurting the race.
Right. Right. That happens a lot. That happens quite a lot.
And not to say that I get it right all the time, but I am at least interested in getting it right or telling stories that are complex as much as the medium will allow. That's why, I had such a great run on Queen Sugar for 6 seasons and show running that show, and sort of kind of is that that show and my own little private mission of what I wanted to do in TV was one of those rare but grateful moments that, connected. And that's, one of the reasons I think I was able to be successful in that environment.
I want to talk more about that, but I do want to going back into the education piece. I know that you and your wife both teach at USC, right?
Well, my wife teaches I used to teach at USC. I have my degrees from there. My wife is actually an associate dean and teaches in the undergraduate department where I have my undergraduate degree. It's one of those real stories. And so it's funny whenever she's going through drama, which, you know, it's a drama department. So, you know, I'm able to be like, you know, tell her where the bones are buried and things like that. I'd be like, what, that person's tripping? Like, they used to, like, they need to sit down. Like, you know, be happy they still have a job. You know, tripping when I was a student, you know. So my wife is an actor and a director, and we have both been very, very committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And before we even had that phrase to name it. And so it's been you know, it's Valentine's Day, and we're talking, and so it is the hard to believe, actually, the 27th anniversary of our first date.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And but we've been able to
look at your face as you said it. Like, it's a very sincere.
You know, well, it's hard to believe because I feel like, you know, I'm like, whoa, you know, because we met when I was 12, obviously.
Right, like, you know, when you were 3, and then
we just knew each other. We were the one. But we have both been very conscientious, intentional Black artists, and it's not been an easy road, but we're still here. We're still doing our thing. I applaud her every day. So happy for what she does, and she's happy for what I do. And we're always looking for opportunities, obviously, to work together. But it's been really, really great, you know, for two young, at that time, Black artists who had no connections or anything like that. All we had was our education, our desire to be good and put our work out in the world. And it worked out to a degree.
No, I mean, I find that people, I mean, it's, you know, it doesn't work out for everybody necessarily, but it takes a certain kind of person. And I do find that people that come to Hollywood that, I mean, at least try to have a plan for themselves, whatever that is, they're just willing to try something.
Yeah.
They tend to do very well. Like, when I just say, listen, I'm going to go for it. So you have to have that ambition. You have to have that drive. You have to have that want, that desire, you know. And just like you said, you were like, and I just thought that was so interesting how you put it. You said you just got close enough sometimes where maybe things didn't happen exactly how you wanted in that particular moment, but you knew with what was happening that you were on to something, and you knew that it was something good. And that
absolutely, absolutely. When you keep finding yourself, finding yourself in rooms that you haven't been in before, with people you haven't talked to before, and you're there not in some sort of sycophant role, but you're there as a kind of peer. That, you know, it helps you to keep going. But also when you've put in the work to be able to take your creativity and your craft seriously. You know, you have a lot of people, I sometimes talk to people in workshops, and I was like, you want a career, you don't want a moment. And we live in a world where you can act a fool on Instagram and have a moment. You know, you could even have a job or two and have a moment. But if you want a career at this, and something that is highly subjective, ultimately, you got to look to the people who have been running this race for a long time, even longer than myself. And how seriously did they take their work? You know, the work is the only thing that sustains you, because who's hot and who's on the cover of the magazine this month versus next month, all that stuff is fleeting.
Yeah, it's true.
And so if you're in it for the glam up game, if you're in it for, you know, the glow up game, if you're in it for, you know, so you can be Flossie McPants, I worry that about you, because I think that will not sustain you. The only thing that will sustain you, I think, is an interest in doing the work, doing the best work that you can, behaving like a human being when you do have good moments, and not embarrassing your mama and how she raised
right.
You have the spotlight, and now you act a damn fool, like you don't know nobody, you know. All of that stuff, I think, gives you a shot, and that's all you can ever have is a shot, right? Because we don't control what's going to happen.
Yeah, and I mean, all one has really is real reputation, and I'm trying to choose also my words very delicately here. But I want
Yeah.
to agree with what you're saying, but I also just want to add that I think, especially with social media,
Yeah.
the way that social media has presented itself or what it's created is
Mhm.
these are people who may not even themselves have necessarily wanted to be in the spotlight, but they
Right.
desire a kind of, it's not even about creativity.
Yeah.
And it's not even about anything. So it's,
What is it about?
what is it
It's
about?
about clout of
I
some.
don't even know.
I don't know what it is.
So and I see people, I mean, and to your point, like, whatever they're looking for in terms of the type of visibility. And I see people that try to qualify whether or not a person should even have a conversation based on followers or likes or things like that. I'm just like,
Yeah.
what is even that? Like, that's
Right.
just
Right.
crazy to me. I don't understand it. And it's allowed a space where you'll enter rooms. Like, I remember one time, and I'm not even going to name the conference, but I went to a conference for a job. And it
Uh-huh.
was essentially like basically like a lot of influencers that were in the room. And when I tell you, everywhere I turned, everybody was like on some this, 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 this. I mean, nobody was talking to anyone. It was just like all kinds of social media. And I just felt like I was in an episode of like some sort of strange, like one of those like techie, Black Mirror-y
Twilight Zone kind of
yeah,
thing.
yeah, I really did. And I was just like, well, I'm not trying to act like I'm above it all. Like, I certainly have
Right.
my own flaws and I partake too. And like, I would suddenly be like, oh my gosh, I got 10,000 likes. Like, maybe I would appreciate that moment
It
too.
feels good. Yeah.
It feels, yeah, exactly. It's people like stuff like that. But at the same time, I know that I don't know these people. When I when I log off, I still have to face the world. And I feel like people aren't facing the world or just really dealing in a reality. So that's just sort of my thought on social media.
Well, I mean, obviously there can be a great use of social media. I don't think either of us are sitting here arguing for going back to, I like rotary phones. There was nothing wrong with those. We're not.
No, I'm not doing that.
We're not doing that.
No.
But what we are saying is there is a performative quality that social media has sort of forced on all of us.
Yes.
And we have to be careful that has not taken the place of whatever real work looks like to you. Look,
yes.
I started off when I was in New York performing and then writing. I was also performing my own writing. So I was doing one-man shows and stuff like that before I would go do the show that was paying me and allowing me to make a living.
Mm-hmm.
If I were coming along today, I might do a one-man show, or I might be on Instagram creating content.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I do respect and understand that, and the power potentially that it puts in the hands of everyday folk to be able to display their creativity. I applaud that. We wouldn't have Issa Rae if it wasn't for
that's correct. Yep.
And so I think many people in their back of their head, they might be thinking that that's the road that they're on, and they might be on that road, and it's a way to showcase their wares. But there is something to be said for exploring longer forms of storytelling, frankly, than a reel will allow. And just doing whatever that real work represents to you. So, just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I think that's a fair way to put it. And I also think, again, going back to what you said you wanted to, when you decided to go further as far as creative education in terms of theater or writing, you just wanted to be able to have a more substantial conversation about what you were talking about or what you were seeing, and more depth to it. And that's, again, not anything to take away from somebody that hasn't taken that path, but there's absolutely something to be said about really looking into and digging into the history of things.
Right.
Why what is, if things are the way that they are, and how a person can change it. But you have to know what's there or what's going on.
Exactly. You have to. I'm not the first person to look like you or I to come through this door, and I don't want to be the last. And I'm trying to get to the Negro artist section of heaven, if they will allow me. I do not want to show up at the pearly gates and they say you had opportunity and you had success, and what did you do with it? And my answer is shoes. I bought some fly shoes.
You seen my Instagram?
right. Like I don't want that to be the thing. And so there is a responsibility to being, I think, a Black creative person.
Yeah.
Remember, we were brought to this country to work until we died.
Yeah. Yeah.
Physically, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to get to a point where you can be respected or certainly paid and or let's say respected for the creative and intellectual content. When I say pay me for my thoughts, I'm being funny, but I'm not.
You're not. Right. It's, yeah. You
And
earned it. Yeah.
I'm saying
Yeah.
that there's an implicit,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to say politic to that,
Mm-hmm.
there is one there.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just wanted to do my best to be as responsible to that as I could and continue to be, and as I move forward. Again, not that I get it right all the time, because we're all human and we are all on a learning journey and blah blah blah. And I'm not saying that everybody's journey to being responsible with the power or access that they get to create mass media stories has to look like my journey. It does not.
Right.
It's not. But if somebody shoves a camera in your mouth and starts talking about environmentalism and racism, and you don't know nothing about that,
you should say that you don't know nothing. That's the problem that I have. People just start, talking. Yeah.
And it's like, ho, you might be really
just
like,
a little outside of your wheelhouse with this.
And so I just want to be, and I will say, I'm an executive producer and writer on Bel-Air, finished show running, executive producing and writing Queen Sugar. And I have a bunch of stuff I'm not able to talk about today, sort of in the pot that's boiling. I was just telling my team yesterday, I was just like, hey, thanks for taking what I want to do and how I want to be positioned in the industry seriously. Because the things that are coming to me now, I'm ready for them. And they are hefty projects.
Yeah.
They are not projects and stories that you're going to tap dance your way around.
Right.
It requires someone who's willing to do some real work and has proven that they have the capacity to do that. And again, not to say I'm going to get it right all the time, but you're going to get a real good attempt and stab at it. And hopefully that will make some really entertaining, but also really edifying and impactful stories that I'm producing and creating, and I take it very seriously, I take it very seriously.
I see. I see. I do want to ask this question though, because just to sort of round it out a little bit, when someone says that they're an executive producer or a showrunner, I'm not even sure people really know what that means.
Absolutely. Yeah. So in television, not all producers, but most producers are writers. And what that means is that you are a higher level writer, and you also have impact and say so on a lot of production decisions and budgetary decisions and other creative decisions that have to go into producing a show. So a showrunner is literally sort of the creative vision of a show, and sort of think of it as the author of a book. Okay. And even though TV tends to be written by a team of people, they are the last word on, what a script looks like. They are the creative touchstone that all of the different people, 200, 300 people who work to bring a TV show to life, they are the boss, so to speak. From a creative standpoint, they have partners with other types of producers who handle the money and things like that, but it all gets funneled through that person. Okay. And so the executive producer, showrunner, is always an executive producer.
Okay.
An executive producer tends to be the showrunner, but might be helping the showrunner. And that is also, helping the showrunner run their show and things like that. So on some shows, I'm the showrunner and executive producer. Sometimes I'm the executive producer and I let somebody else deal with the problems of actually running the show.
Yeah.
But I am, one of the senior voices on that show is basically what that means,
Oh, that's excellent. So then when you see this, because now people can recognize the weight of what it means to be an executive producer, showrunner. You have a much heavier responsibility. It kind of falls on you. So if the show whether it works or it doesn't. So when you see something, when you all imagined Bel-Air, let's say, for instance, and I've actually spoken to Jabari Banks before. This is someone that just didn't have that chance or that shot yet. Yeah. And you guys just catapulted this young man into.
What a shot. Yeah.
I mean, wow, right? He's so good, and he's actually even speaking to him. He's such an incredible human being, and I just really enjoyed our conversation. But when you see what you do with a show like that, and I mean, I guess when you're talking through an idea like that, you already know people are going to be like, that just doesn't even sound like that'd be the case. That show was never serious.
Right.
But then it just worked completely. So what does that feel like when you execute and you're like, bingo?
Right. Bel-Air being a dramatic reinterpretation,
yes,
legacy comedy show. In many ways, it had every reason in the world not to work.
Right.
Like, why would you do this?
Right.
Well, the reason you would do it is because if you actually look at the premise of that sitcom, there's a very serious story there. And Morgan Cooper, who is the filmmaker who originally came up with this idea, was able to, connected with studio and network people and help get this thing on the air. What he essentially did was just take the premise very seriously and ask an important question. What would that story look like in the 21st century? And what would that story look like if you took it seriously, as opposed to put it in a sitcom format? So I feel like while it seemed risky because you were messing with the memories of the legacy show, dramatically, it made perfect sense.
Yeah.
Absolute perfect sense. So I'm having a great time, working with Carla Banks Waddles and Jabari and Morgan Cooper, and Malcolm Spellman and others. I'm having a great time taking seriously the journey of a young Black male trying to find his authentic self. That's essentially what the story is.
Yeah.
How often do we get to tell that story in TV? We're basically taking seriously the interior life of a young Black male. So it's kind of a fish out of water story. He's from West Philly. He's dropped in the middle of this opulent life in Bel-Air. He's got to redefine himself to himself. He's got to redefine what Blackness means to him, right? Because so many of us define it through the prism of lack.
Yeah. Oh, what a good point. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we had to. Okay. Well, now here's a set of people who they ain't lacking lack. Okay.
At all.
They got plenty of whatever it is that you want. So now who are you now? How do you keep it real when you are, sleeping in a bedroom that's the size of, your entire apartment back in the city,
Right.
And so it's been really, really great helping to articulate those stories, as our second season gets ready to drop. It's been really, really awesome. I just take being able to tell stories like this very, very seriously. And I just love entertaining people by reflecting themselves back to themselves.
Oh, that's great the way you described that. And what does it also feel like when you are in this position where, when you're telling these stories and you've got these different actors in these roles, and you watch somebody grow and you watch that person become just like, again, it catapults somebody like Jabari's career, and you see that he is a bona fide star now. And so how does it feel just knowing that in some way that you're also very responsible for that, and you really allow somebody to live their dream?
Well, it's really, really great. I wish I could say that I was the person who discovered Jabari. I was not. Cooper and the showrunners from the first season. But wow, the cast of Bel-Air. Whoa, this cast is amazing. And so it's really, really beautiful. I did get to have a conversation with Jabari once, just hanging out on the set. And I was like, I always wanted to be a part of helping to create stories and opportunities for people just like you, because I was you 25 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And this was not here.
Right.
So it's really lovely for me to be working on this show and seeing this young man grow and shine. He is a star. Ollie, who plays Carlton, is fantastic. We are really all working for him one day, mark my words. Being able to, create dialogue and images for this beautiful chocolate woman who plays Vivian, it's sort of like it's you know, being able to present a certain type of leadership through the Uncle Phil that's you know that's being played beautifully. It's progress without it necessarily going progress like in some sort of flag that we're waving. We're just telling our stories, and while you're telling our stories, look at these beautiful chocolate people.
Exactly.
You know, and they're lovely life, and so it's great. It's really like a living a small part of the dream, you know.
Yeah, I did love the way that you all didn't cast like in such an obvious way where it's like, okay, we're going to find the actual Will. We're going to find, you know, Carlton. So I mean, I just think that, you know, it's just a completely different show.
People have different philosophies of casting. My philosophy of casting is about essence and not, you know, physical resemblance and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know, you can find, you know, you can try to play the physical resemblance game. You're usually going to lose at it, number one.
Yeah.
Or number two, you're not going to get the actor always that is going to bring something unexpected that you didn't necessarily think of to a particular role. And the reimagining of of these characters from the sitcom and how they were then cast for this dramatic reinterpretation, they really couldn't have gotten it more right if they tried, in my opinion. You know, it was one of the reasons I wanted to come onto the show as an executive producer, was to you know, just round out stories for this amazing cast.
No, it's great. I mean, I was a little late to it because I was like, sometimes like when the hashtags start rolling, I don't want to watch yet because I'm like, I might end up clicking on something and then like seeing like and getting spoilers.
Yeah.
Then I ended up just like completely binging it, and I'm like, why didn't I join the conversation sooner so I could be a part of that conversation?
You know, sometimes, you know, you come to it when you come to it, you know.
Yeah, no, it's a great show. Definitely looking forward. And of course, I know you said you're working on different projects, but and that you can't necessarily. No one can ever talk about what they're working.
No, I don't know. I know, and it must drive people like you crazy.
Like, can we know something?
You know, it's I will say that, you know, I'm getting to work on meaningful stories.
I love that.
That's all I can see, with meaningful people.
Yes, that's good.
Some who look like us, some who don't, but who are all invested in telling stories that have impact. And for me to be able to play in that sandbox is, you know, it's that little 18-year-old, you know, South Side of Chicago boy's dream come true, you know.
Oh, wow. That's so wonderful. Like, you're really, truly living out your dream.
You know.
And yeah, it's the 27th anniversary of when his wife went on.
That's right. That's right. You know.
And look at his face when you bring up his wife. That's wonderful.
Well, she ain't kicked me to the curb, so you know, artists.
She said he really is really creative and interesting. Okay,
yeah.
How you keep that going for that long?
I don't, you know. Well, I mean, my wife is gorgeous, number one.
Yes.
She is like, you know, people may like me when they meet me, and then they meet my wife, and they're like,
oh,
so
okay.
You're like, oh, so you punching above your weight, you know?
No.
I was like, well, first of all, you know, she did all right by marrying me, so stop making fun. But I don't, you know, grace of God and also purpose, you know. Yes. I think. And, you know, we've been blessed with 3 wonderful kids who, you know, challenge us every day, you know.
Are they also into the creative arts as well?
They are, in their own way. My daughter's an incredible, very serious poet in her first semester of college, and she's also a dancer. She did some theater like her mama and me, but she went slightly, you know, in another field, and she is just, you know, doing her thing. And then we have twin sons.
Twins.
I have twin sons, and one is like everything I was interested in, he is interested in it twice as much. Like, and it's sort of me to watch because I didn't like throw that on him.
Right.
The other son is as different from me as he could possibly be, but he's like the cool kid I wish I was when I was born. He's so cool. Like, he's just, you know, he's got swag and all that.
Like like all that stuff, right?
You know,
Yeah, I was quirky. I wasn't cool.
yeah, you know, I was quirky cool. I ain't gonna give it. I was me, you know.
Yeah, I'll say that. Yeah, it wasn't like, it was all right,
So, you know,
I did all right too. I thank you so much for your time. It's been wonderful talking to you. Like I said, it's always great to have these kind of conversations because no one ever really knows what goes into really in totality into bringing a show on. A lot of people, they're auditioning all day and there's of course incredible talent in that as well. But it's like, what about really who puts things together operationally and creatively? Like, it's just like, what goes on? How do I do it?
Absolutely. When I go to a circus, I can actually barely focus on the circus because I'm so busy going like, who is stage managing this? Who is feeding the elephants right now? Like, who is, and so what I'll say, if I could say this one last thing before is I began as an actor, from Chicago and all of that. And it was wonderful and it was beautiful. But as I got more information, which you get as you live and you are exposed to things, I did allow my dream to evolve. I sometimes think we don't encourage enough or allow people, like, you don't have to keep beating at something that you said you wanted to do at age 18.
Right.
That was true then, and that's great. And it might be true for the rest of your life. But do you have to be one thing for your entire life?
That's a great takeaway.
And as you get more information, I couldn't say I wanted to be a TV writer when I was 18. I didn't know it existed.
Right.
And so that's what I would say is that sometimes we need to allow ourselves, based on circumstances and new information, to make a different decision or an evolving decision.
I think that's my biggest takeaway from our conversation is that you're really big on being curious or wanting to remain informed. And I think that is the one thing that will keep all of us going. If we can keep that spark within ourselves, I don't want to necessarily like it'll keep us young per se, because I don't think that we should necessarily always celebrate youth. Like, we should be happy to be at the station that we're at.
That's right.
But we need to really, really be curious about the world and just wonder and know that we don't have all the answers. But I also think it's very important what you said, that your dream can evolve. That is so important, because I don't want anybody to feel like they failed at something if things have taken if they've gone a different path.
Exactly. And I recognize that I get to say that from the place of privilege, in the sense that I had enough success at what I was doing that when I evolved, or I was able to feel like I walked away on my terms. And I know that everybody doesn't always feel like that. But you gotta, hopefully, if we're blessed with long life, there does come a point where I think you just have to allow yourself to have a new dream sometime.
Yeah, that's great. No, it's true. It's true. I'm going to write some stuff down today. I'm about to be a writer too.
It's awesome talking to you.
It was so good talking to you. I mean, and I just, you really have no idea how inspirational this conversation was, because, again, I'm trying to rap. I just keep talking. But I think and I'll just say this one last thing and I'll just completely wrap. But I love also that you said that you also, your wife, you guys have a friend group where you get to have these intelligent, creative conversations, but then they're also like high level conversations, not just about, like the art necessarily, but just things about
the world, about, and we educate each other and just realize, especially if you've had the privilege of education and you have a peer group. One of the first things sometimes when I'm talking to people, new writers, and they come to town and they're like, what should I do? And I'm like, well, first of all, get out of your apartment or wherever you live. And like get with some other creative people.
Absolutely.
Join a writer's group, join a director's group, join an acting class, make an acting class, or whatever it is. Also, what do you care about in the world other than your advancement in it? Like do that you care about the environment? Go you like whatever. Like making
people need hobbies, is basically
pick a hobby and go live. And I just hate that, because of all the things we're told about how hard it is to be an artist, and you do have to be prepared. And I'm not saying that that's not a conversation that needs to happen. But if we can find a way to not put our life on hold while we're pursuing that thing we're pursuing it, and you get to define that, whatever that is, like go do that as well. And guess what? And then you'll find your work is actually better.
Ah, yes. Oh, I love that. That's great. That's where we're gonna on that note, that was a good note. Once again, my name is Koku with blackfilm.com, and I was here with Anthony Sparks. He has been the lead writer and executive producer on NBC Peacock's Bel-Air, and the showrunner, of course. He actually even told us the difference between a showrunner and executive producer, which was really, that was a great message there, because I really didn't know.
They're often the same, but sometimes
they're different. Yeah. And also, guys, I know a lot of you were very sad to see Queen Sugar wrap for its final season, and take it up with this man. Not me.
It was a privilege for me to work on it for 6 of those seasons, but it was the show had a great run, and I'm glad that I was a part of that.
No, and it's great to wrap things up in a nice, neat bow too. Like sometimes it's just time. So I understand that too. I understand that too. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Anthony Sparks. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care.
You take
Happy anniversary.
Have a great day. Happy Love Day, everybody.
You too. Bye-bye.
If you want to see more content like this on blackfilm.com, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell.